Hi, I am Emma Hewitt, and I'm the Research and Knowledge Exchange Manager at the Royal College of Music, which, as you can tell from my job title, means I'm not a data preservation expert. So I would imagine that most of the people in this room know an awful lot more than I do. So what I'm setting out to do is just to give you a brief snapshot of the kinds of data we have at the Royal College of Music and some of the challenges that we have had in data preservation, and especially with the RDSS project going forward. So it's just a snapshot. I'm not going to any huge detail here, but oh, you're going to do me properly here. That's good. Oh, good. Right. Okay. Okay. So Royal College of Music and Research Data. So what we've got, we are part of the RDSS project because we have various different types of data. We're all in one small organisation. So we've got heritage and standard scientific type data sets. And obviously with ref looming and open access, data preservation is becoming even more important, and GDPR. I'm sure you've all been suffering the pain of GDPR over the last few weeks. Now, our practice-based researchers, and I mean our musicians, our performers by practice-based, aren't aware of the kinds of data behind their work. In the main, our composers don't think of themselves as researchers, they think of themselves as performers. So I've been doing some work with them on starting to think about what they produce, their stuff, as a portfolio of data. Now, getting the Royal College of Music systems to talk to each other, what's the point of having a secure storage system for our research data if nobody can find it? Now, last summer, we, as part of the RDSS project, we had a data asset framework. Now, you can't see this because it's entirely little writing, but it gives you a rough idea of the kind of places that we store our data. And lots of it is on a hard drive, and lots of it is, I don't know where it is. So probably with the exception of our Centre for Performance Science, who have to be very careful about where they store their data, most of the time it's, well, I'm not really quite sure. So what we were looking for is a data preservation system which would be able to cope with current formats and legacy formats. And you can see here, this is really very old school here. This is a pneumatic tape which was underneath the Britten Theatre, pile of dusty tapes, and some of the money from our RDSS project has gone into digitising these. So pile of tapes, what are they, what's on them, not quite sure. And the urgency of this is that the information on the tapes were likely to get lost. So they were actually going to degrade. And some of the items were labelled, some of them were blank. Some of them, like the reel-to-reel tapes, needed baking. So they actually needed sort of putting in the equivalent of an oven to secure the information on the tapes. And these are the kind of formats that we were talking about. So again, legacy formats. And the idea is that going forward, we can digitize these and then put them into the data preservation system, and then people can find this information. Now, apart from heritage data, our Centre for Performance Science, which I mentioned earlier, they do lots of work with Imperial College, music and health as a major theme. So they do standard surveys and questionnaires from large-scale projects, such as the absolutely massive AHRC project called Musical Impact. And they also do things like taking saliva samples from cancer survivors. There was a choir project with cancer survivors, so that's very successful. So it's actually finding ways of proving that music is good for you rather than just saying it is. And also we have performance capture. Now, I don't know whether I can get this link to work, but we have a large-scale EU project we're involved in called TELMI, and that's about finding ways through technology to this sounds really geeky, but to find ways of improving musicians' techniques, specifically with the violin, through motion capture. So I'll see if I can get this link to work. It may or may not work. Should it? Oh, that's great. That'd be great. Let's see. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to be able to go about a minute in to this, if I can, because it's a bit of a long video. So if I can just scroll forward a bit. Is it not coming up? Just give us a hand. And what I want to do is to scroll through to about 1 minute 20 on this. And then we can... there you go. About 120, yeah. And that'll show what I'm talking about now. So we can get the sound to work. Doesn't matter if it doesn't, because it just illustrates what's... Here we are.
TELMI Project wants to change this by making music accessible and appealing to everyone. Several groundbreaking technologies are being applied within the project to detect the movements and sounds a musician makes. These include advanced sensors that measure the exact speed and position of the bow, or the Microsoft Kinect, which can track the movement of the whole body. These systems can provide real-time feedback to the violinist and their teacher, highlighting issues, improving communication, and enhancing the learning experience.
There you go. So that was her. She's very posh, this lady. So we'll go back to her. No, it could have been me. She's a bit posher than me, I think. So if I go back to my PowerPoint here, is that going to be the right one? Yes, here we go. There we are. Let's go down. So that, I think, hopefully illustrates it's slightly left field, maybe not exactly what you're thinking, the kind of thing that a music conservatoire will be doing. So this here, I've just given you. Ooh, that's nice of her. She's. I didn't ask her to play that. Look, no hands. We'll shut her up now. There we are. So that's actually good, because that would that. Ooh, she's gone. Good. What is happening here is that's her. That's a blob taken from the Kinect, and then this is some of the text from the motion capture files. So you can see what they've got. They've got these bands on to track the movement, and you can see there's a wrist point, neck point, shoulder point, ankle point, and this is it's all very precise stuff. It's producing reams and reams of data. So that's the kind of stuff that we've got that needs storing. Now, so I said earlier about our data asset framework. So that's given us an idea of what kinds of data we've got and the fact it's not really being stored anywhere. Now, my wish list for the RDSS project is we have now got a new staff profile database, and you think, well, what's that got to do with research data? It's my view here is to try and get what people are doing out onto the website, out onto the front end of the RCM as easily as possible. So the idea of that is that provides a mechanism to link to the new GISC research repository. That's the shop window. And then that harvests the data from the Preservica data repository. And the idea in that is to also store our e-theses. So, try and get as much in there as you possibly can. But the RCM does not, at the moment, have a data preservation policy problem. So it makes it difficult to make any decisions on what we're storing and for how long and why. And I'm sure, as I've said earlier, all people in this room are far further ahead than we are on this. But really, for a conservatoire, we've never really had to think about this before. So at the moment we're in the process of road testing Preservica with the digitised studio items. And for a non-data preservation specialist, and we haven't got anyone who's a data preservation specialist working with these kind of systems, at the moment it's very clunky to use. And also, when JISC have their new research repository ready, is that actually going to be what we want? And then, finally, money. Is it going to be affordable? We're only tiny. We have a few researchers, but not many. Yes, we can produce quite a lot of data, but really making the point about whether this is a good idea to senior management is going to be difficult. So we really need to be able to prove that what we can put in there is going to be findable, secure, and the formats that we are going to put in there are going to automatically renew as we've been promised they will do. So that's where we are, really. So has anyone got any questions?
How big are these files? You said it produces an enormous amount of data.
Well,
How
enormous for us. It's probably not enormous by anybody else's standards. I don't know, because we've only got a few sample sets of data at the moment, because we haven't been able to use Preservica because it's been too difficult to use. We've got a few very small samples from TELMI, so that's again, we're behind where we would want to be at the moment with the project. We've been finding Preservica difficult to use, so really just to actually be able to get anybody to test it properly and figure out what we're going to put in there, it's been difficult. So I don't know at the moment.
Can I follow up a related question? How regular are your data sets? Are they all of the same kind, or are they all very, very different?
We have got video streaming stuff that needs preserving from the studios. So we have public concerts with high-level musicians that need preserving. We're not going to save all the student concerts because that would just be too much. So that's terabytes and terabytes worth of data. And then we've got our standard social sciencing type stuff, text files from surveys. And then we've got some oral history stuff as well that needs preserving. I mean, thing is, I don't really know as much as I should do because I'm not a data preservation expert. So we're in this project as a sort of as the data dummies, if you like, almost. I'm not proud. So really, if we can't figure out how to use this as an average user, then it's not going to be. There are so many other institutions in the same kind of position. So that wasn't really answering your question, I know.
Yeah, no, I'm interested in the video stuff in particular, and
Yeah.
take that as an example. I mean, I'm imagining, perhaps naively,
Yeah.
that what you have is terabytes and terabytes of data.
Yes.
But it's effectively all in a very familiar set. There's maybe 4 or 5 file formats, for example, in that big set, if you see what I mean, rather than So there's an issue when you get terabytes of data,
Yeah.
but they're all the same. And then there might be issues when you've got maybe just only gigabytes of data, but they're all
different.
incredibly different.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out where on that sort of spectrum you are.
So
I'm guessing
Yeah.
you're on the large but regular.
Larger, regular stuff, and then the kind of smaller data sets that get produced from the projects, from the research projects, could be different. Because some of those data sets from the Connect, for instance, motion capture, they were really funky, different kinds of data sets there and formats.
I'm remembering a conversation at a DPC event between a woman called Jen Mitchum, who at that point was with the Archaeology Data Service. She's now in the University of York. And a woman called Helen something or other from the BBC. Now, the BBC had all the big numbers, but they controlled completely the production process, whereas Jen had very, very small numbers in terms of actual scale, but man alive, she had every possible exotic combination of data set in there. And both of them had significant challenges, but the challenges were of an order of magnitude different because of the way the processes of production worked.
Yeah. We also need to figure out, through our data preservation policy, once we write it, what we're going to keep, how long for, and also metadata templates. What's going to be sensible? What's going to be? Who's going to be able to understand this? Because we're not going to get a whole data preservation, section of the RCM. So going forward, it needs to be still readable.